Yeah.
So Donald Glover, or Childish Gambino, is a prominent figure in the entertainment industry, and something that we all experience. And we'll be talking about each of his careers as an artist today.
Donald Glover, we've been exposed to him through the years, either through his music or through his appearances in film productions. And that, plus all the hours leading up to this, of research leading up to this project, me and the group now have a good grasp of who he is and the influence he has to society or to people through his work.
And we'll also be talking about his impact and his legacy, not only on the entertainment industry, but also on society in general.
Now, what makes Donald Glover so influential isn't that he's super talented in one aspect of his life, like many people in Hollywood. It's that he's a multifaceted individual that's super talented in things like music, acting, comedy, and a variety of other things that you'll see today. And so, first, if we're going to understand a little bit about Donald Glover, let's find out exactly what made him the man he is today. So for some of the details on his early life, John Lynch of Business Insider starts with his birth. He was born Donald McKinley Glover Jr. in September 25th, 1983, on the Edwards Air Force Base Camp, about 4 hours away in California. His parents were Beverly and Donald Glover Sr., two very devout Jehovah's Witnesses. And while he was born in California, his family quickly moved to Stone Mountain, Georgia, where he would spend the rest of his childhood. Picking up where Insider left off, Lucas Canver describes one of the Childish Gambino's earliest childish memories. So in Stone Mountain, it's a suburb of Atlanta in Georgia, and every year they have a laser show they hold at the Stone Mountain Memorial, which is a memorial to Robert E. Lee carved into the rock itself. Now, to start off the ceremony, they kind of do a whole tribute to the Civil War. And at the end of this Civil War laser show that they do, where they kind of project an image of what happened. And at the end, when the South gives up, as he recalls, you remember that all of a sudden, all the people around him and his family started throwing beer cans at them. And his first thought was, how can I make these people like me? Fast forward to 2002, he's a college student attending NYU. This is also where he would find the name Childish Gambino. According to Karen Ruffini of Elite Daily, his friends were out drinking one night when they came across something called the Wu-Tang Name Generator. And so he put in his name, and it came up as the Childish Gambino. And while he wouldn't use that name for another 7 years, it stuck with him, and it would be his moniker for the rest of his career. Now, also during his 4 years in college, he started his comedy act, but not in any professional publications. Instead, he made his own homemade videos of his comedy. And these videos went viral, catching the attention of 30 Rock's Tina Fey. Fey then asked him if after college he would join the writers of the NBC sitcom. And in 2006, after graduating with a degree in dramatic writing, he joined the Writers Commission. Now his family is a bit different than it was back then, especially after all the changes he's had in his career. Glover keeps his personal life very private. In fact, so private that many don't know if he's married or if he has any children. Sarah Huron of US Daily describes that he's been dating longtime girlfriend Michelle, whose last name hasn't been revealed to the public yet, for about 5 years, and he has about 2 sons. One was born 5 years ago, and the second was born just last year, but wasn't known until February this year. Now, it's admirable how someone like Glover keeps his personal life so private nowadays, given all the speculation that Hollywood does on celebrities. But now we're going to talk a little bit more about his very public life and his comedy career.
So, as mentioned, he does wear many hats, you could say, through his creative outlets. And some of those are writing as well as comedy. He is a comedian. Although not currently hyperactive. He was very active in 2010 and 2012. So he began very early in his career. As stated, he during college he did create this YouTube account with two of his buddies, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But just because he started with writing and comedy, that helped him strengthen kind of like some of his attributes going on like later on in his life to working with other creative outlets. So you probably only know Donald through only through his music as Childish Gambino. So I am going to get into detail about his comedy and his writing, his work as a writer, his work as a comedian, and his unique stand-up comedy style. So as mentioned by Jake, he did, after college, he started with NBC's American sitcom 30 Rock. And even then, he was supposed to only be a tech writer, but after a while, he did participate in a few comedy skits, as shown in this picture. And from then on, you could tell that he wanted to expand and not only strictly be a writer. Later on, after some time acting, he created the FX series Atlanta, which he worked on as a writer as well. This picture shows Paul Sims, which is the designated director. Apart from being a writer for TV series, Donald is also a writer for himself, as he uses his creative outlet in comedy. As I said, he did start a YouTube account with two of his buddies, and it was called Derek Comedy. They did comedy skits, and the YouTube channel has over 7 million views. And although this is, you can skip to the next page. This is pretty cool. I don't know how active you guys are on YouTube, but if a YouTube account isn't like active like every few months or at least every year, usually the subscribers will unsubscribe. But unlike that, with Derek Comedy, it hasn't been active for about 7 years, but it still has over 216,000 subscribers. And which was cool too, when I started looking at it, in the beginning it was at 215, and by last night it switched to 216. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then other things that he's been doing was his Comedy Central special and Comedy Central Presents. That's right here, where he did a stand-up comedy for about 30 minutes. And then another work that he did was Weirdo on Netflix. It was a 1 hour long special where he talked about topics such as race discrimination in America, women versus sexual harassment in America, and cross-cultural dating. In the Comedy Central stand-up, he did say he was a very imaginative person. So although he started saying that, it's funny because in an article by Sox City Journal, he did say, "I sleep only about 4 hours a night, and I usually don't dream much." So that kind of just to put that out there, just to kind of get you guys thinking about why is it that he's so creative, I guess you can say. And then what made Donald stand out through his in his comedy life was his personal style to stand-up comedy. He's very outgoing. He talks about like weird, as stated, the title, Weirdo. In his jokes, he's kind of weird, and sometimes they're kind of gross jokes. I won't get into the topics that he talks about that, but just kind of like gross jokes. He engages a lot with the audience, and something about his style is that he, unlike other comedians, they'll just mostly be either super active the whole time, or they'll be super like mono the whole time. He'll start calm, and then as he like starts getting engaged with a certain joke, he starts like being more hyper about it, and then by the time there's usually a sub punchline and then there's a punchline, but by the sub punchline he's very active, like super active, and then the punchline hits, he says it, then calms down completely, and then starts all over again. So it's just kind of this parabola pattern. I don't know, I just thought I'd mention that. That's something unique about him. And then something else is that he's inclusive when he talks about race. Unlike other black comedians, they'll talk about kind of like us or the black community versus everybody else. And they'll talk about certain things about the black community versus everybody else. But something about Donald is that he's very inclusive. He kind of doesn't like to make that difference, which allows him to connect a lot more with his audience. In an article titled Black Nerds, New Directions in African American Humor by David Gillaton, it states, Glover openly acknowledges his black identity and he does not shy away from discussing race. Yet the humor of Glover points to a small yet yielding diversification of the ways in which blackness can be represented and explored by the mass culture. An example of this outside of his comedy is in This Is America. He started. So in This Is America, besides the music aspect of it, the video has a lot of satire, you can call it, and you can tell that this is by his comedic background. And in a CNN article, it states, Childish Gambino's video grabs you by the throat, and what Gambino put together is a true picture of America. Although his comedy work hasn't brought him a lot of success physically, like with awards, it couldn't, without his comedic background, certain awards that he's gotten have not, or couldn't have been possible without his comedic background. So some of the, we can go to the next slide. Some of his awards that he's gotten are from Primetime Emmy Awards, where he won Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series and Outstanding Directing Actor for a comedy series, as well as the Golden Globe Awards, Best Television Series, and Best Actor in Comedy.